Travel along, Catholic pilgrims, for 1 year as we read through St. Faustina's diary. Join me, Amy Thomas, each day for a short reading out of the diary which brought us a deeper understanding of Christ's divine mercy. Hello, Catholic pilgrims, and welcome to day 272 of our readings from St. Faustina's diary. So I just recently got done reading the Scarlet Letter with my daughter for school, and so we were talking about it tonight while I was cooking dinner. She was doing some work on it, thinking about a theme. And then I came in here to do my podcast, and when I was reading through a certain part of Sister Faustina's diary, I brought to mind what my daughter and I were talking about, and so I was like, hey, I can tie these two things together, and so I will. In Notebook 5, numbers 1335 through 1340. Jesus has made known to me that I should pray for the sisters who are making the retreat. During prayer, I learned of the struggle that some are undergoing, and I redoubled my prayers. In this profound silence, I am better able to judge the condition of my soul. My soul is like clear water in which I can see everything, both my misery and the vastness of God's graces. And owing to this true knowledge of itself, my spirit is strengthened in deep humility. I expose my heart to the action of your grace like a crystal exposed to the rays of the sun. May your image be reflected in it, O my God, to the extent that it is possible to be reflected in the heart of a creature. Let your divinity radiate through me, O you who dwell in my soul. As I was praying before the Blessed Sacrament and greeting the 5 wounds of Jesus, at each salutation I felt a torrent of graces gushing into my soul, giving me a foretaste of heaven and absolute confidence in God's mercy. As I write these words, I hear the cry of Satan. She's writing everything! She's writing everything! And because of this, we are losing so much. Do not write about the goodness of God. He is just. And howling with fury, he vanished. O merciful God, you do not despise us, but lavish your graces on us continuously. You make us fit to enter your kingdom, and in your goodness you grant that human beings may fill the places vacated by the ungrateful angels. O God of great mercy, who turned your sacred gaze away from the rebellious angels and turned it upon contrite man, praise and glory be to your unfathomable mercy, O God, who do not despise the lowly heart. My Jesus, despite these graces which you send upon me, I feel that my nature, emboldened though it may be, is not completely stilled, and so I keep a constant watch. I must struggle with many faults, knowing well that it is not the struggle which debases one, but cowardice and failure. So if you have never read the Scarlet Letter, I highly recommend that you read it. It's an excellent piece of literature, and there are so many references to it in our daily lives that it makes a lot of things make more sense once you know what the story is about. Now, I'm going to assume that most of you have a general idea of what the Scarlet Letter is about. If you have never read it and you are going to read it, I guess you could say this is a spoiler alert. However, the book is pretty open about things. I wouldn't give away the end, but some of it is not too shocking. Like, I wouldn't be giving away too much. But if you are dying to read it without any knowledge of it, then I would just be done for the day, I guess. Don't listen anymore. So anyway, for those who have a general idea of what it's about or who have read the book, it is about 2 characters, Hester Prynne, and Arthur Dimmesdale. And Arthur Dimmesdale is a minister in the Puritan colony. And the 2 of them have an adulterous affair, and they have a child. Now, nobody in the colony knows who the father is, but because the Puritans were very, very strict, Hester is brought out in front of the crowd, and, shame is heaped upon her, and she is forced to wear a bright red A upon her chest, which stands for an adulteress or adultery. for the rest of her time in the colony. And at that moment, she is given the opportunity to tell who the father is so that he might share in her shame and guilt. And she refuses to do so. And so she goes around this colony being, a total symbol of sinful ways, and everybody in the colony treats her terribly, and she takes it. She really takes it. Even her daughter, as she grows, does not treat her very well. And she just bears wearing the Scarlet Letter on her chest. And the father, he struggles so much with the guilt that he feels because, for one, he's a very revered minister in the colony. Everybody thinks he's just the most holy man on earth, and yet he lives with this great sin that he does not have the courage to say. Not that he needs to really confess it to the whole colony. I don't think that's necessary, but Puritans obviously did not have confessionals with priests, but just to confess it, to take ownership of what he did and to embrace his daughter, which he can't do because they're living this secret life where nobody knows who the father is, and so he doesn't get to know his daughter. And so he struggles mightily with living this kind of lie of a life. He's this revered minister, and yet inside he knows that he has this great sin that he just can't confess. He just lacks the courage. And so it really eats at him. He becomes like physically ill to the point of people are worried about his health, and kind of a vengeful doctor enters the scene. I won't go into that, but it really shows how sin can not only weaken our soul, but it can really cause physical ailments. And just day by day, you see him get worse and worse. Whereas Hester, she's forced to wear this letter. I mean, she could leave the colony, but she's forced to wear this letter and take all the rude comments and and just awful treatment from the colonists. And she takes it, and she does not fare as badly as Arthur because, well, her sin is out there. She just takes, what's come her way. She sees it as a sort of penance for what she's done wrong because she was married. And so, she was not free to enter into any kind of relationship with anybody. And so she is way more emotionally healthy. She's kind of a sad, lonely woman, but she's way more emotionally healthy and physically healthy than is Arthur. So what does this have to do with Sister Faustina? Well, today here at the very end, she says, I must struggle with many faults, knowing well that it is not the struggle which debases one, but cowardice and failure. And so that's what made me think of the Scarlet Letter, because, we all struggle with sins. And there are very few sins where we can just quit them cold turkey. There have been a few sins in my life where once I understood how and why and the magnitude of the sin, I was able to just stop cold turkey. I have not done that sin again. It was actually kind of easy once I learned the church's teaching was on it. And I don't know why those particular sins were easy for me to quit cold turkey. I can't explain it to you, but I think there are some sins where people are able to just do that. But there are other sins where we all just struggle, and it might be a lifetime struggle. But that's not what debases us. The saints struggle with temptations and falling into sins. They do, and we see that here with Sister Faustina. There's been times where she's fallen into sin and she talks about it. She struggles with temptations, all those things. All the saints do. That's not the problem. The problem is the cowardice and failure. And I want to talk about the failure part because I'm sure some of you are like, yeah, well, I've tried to quit a certain sin and I keep failing. To me, what the failure means is a failure to recognize and call it out, to call out that sin. There are so many people walking around who fail to see the sin in their lives. Or if somebody brings it to their attention, they fail to even try. They don't even want to try because they enjoy that sin, or they're just like, this is just who I am. I'm not even going to try anymore, or I'm not even going to start trying. They just fail to even get going, to even try to struggle with it. They just give themselves over to it completely. That's what I think she's talking about when she mentions failure, because all of us fail at fighting that struggle sometimes with our sins, right? That's why we keep going back to confession. But at least we're struggling. I don't think that is what she's meaning by failure. I think it's the failure to even struggle against it. And then the cowardice of not going to confession and calling it out and not facing it. In the Scarlet Letter, the reason why Arthur Dimmesdale is so eaten up by what he's done is because he lacks the courage to go and confess it. And that's the problem. So many of us are like, oh, I can't confess that sin because that's a really bad one. Or, oh my gosh, that's so embarrassing. I don't want to go and tell the priest because I know the priest, and the priest knows me and he knows my voice. And when he hears that it's me and that I've done that sin, well, I'm going to have to switch churches because now he'll know. No, that's the devil talking. We have to confess our sins, and we have to recognize that we will struggle against them. And we have to try. We have to try to struggle against them and not fail to just fall into them and just give ourselves over to them, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so it's just a fascinating book to read, to look at the sins of revenge, the sin of cowardice, and what it can do to a person. And it's also a good book to talk about mercy. It actually is an excellent book. The author, Nathaniel Hawthorne, doesn't really say, hey, mercy would be great here in this colony, but he shows what a lack of mercy looks like. And you as the reader realize, oof, gosh, man, if they had just shown like an ounce of mercy, a lot of people's lives would be different. And that ties right in with, what we're learning here with Sister Faustina. So anyway, it's just a good book, I guess, to tie in with what we're reading here this year. And I would highly recommend it. It's a great book and a lot of lessons to be learned, and a sad book. It's it really, you feel for Arthur and Hester, even though they have committed a great sin. You still feel for them because there is a lack of mercy and a lack of courage. And, throughout the whole book, you're just like, golly, can somebody please be merciful in this book? And, oh my gosh, muster up the courage, man. Just muster up the courage. So, highly recommend. But that is all for today, Catholic Pilgrims. I will see you back here for day 273. And until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.